In psychology, there is a term called psychological flexibility. What this means is the ability to do what matters even in the midst of obstacles. Psychological flexibility is a skill that is exceptionally useful when unexpected events occur. And what more than a pandemic that is staring right at our face like this for us to discuss something like this today in our video? Hey everyone, welcome to day 12 of our video series on handling coronavirus anxiety. This is Sindhu from Aware Mental Health. Let me start by telling you a little story. A year back, I decided that I am going to lose some weight. One of the culprits for putting on weight was my evening snack option. I would usually order a high calorie snack like a samosa or a vada pav or some cheese filled sandwich, and I would see that the more I'm eating it, the more I'm putting on weight. So I decided, you know what, evenings I'm going to eat an apple. So evening would come, I would choose to pick the apple, but as soon as I started to eat the apple, I would start comparing it to the samosa. I would be like, oh, this is nothing like the samosa. I miss that tangy filled, flavorful, spice filled samosa. Oh God, this is such a boring apple. What would happen eventually is I would be so dissatisfied with eating the apple that I would eventually order a samosa and eat that and get dissatisfied even more. It became a vicious cycle. What really helped here was some flexible reframing. When I would pick the apple to have as my snack, I would allow the apple to be an apple rather than wanting or needing it to be like a samosa. I would eat the apple for what it is rather than what it is something not. So, with each bite, I would smell the apple, I would enjoy the crunchiness of the apple, I would notice the juiciness with each bite and the sweetness of the apple. The reason I told this story is because in the middle of this pandemic, everything feels like that boring apple. Every weekend, I wonder if you are also comparing it to your previous weekends of how it was like before the pandemic happened. This is such a boring weekend. By this time, I would be in a movie. By this time, I would be off to a restaurant to have some really interesting food. What kind of a weekend is this? And not just our weekends, it's also our weekdays. I wonder if you're noticing some thoughts like, before the pandemic, I would work for 8 hours. I would work with so much focus, so much attention. I would get more things done at a much faster pace. So, what is happening now is that we are given an apple. We didn't choose this apple. We had some really samosa kind of days before, and we're noticing that this comparison is happening with our pre pandemic days. So, with psychological flexibility, let's start reframing how our days and weekends are going to look like in the midst of this pandemic. One aspect that I'm hearing a lot in my therapy sessions and outside of therapy sessions is how people are struggling with this aspect of productivity during their weekdays. So let's bring in psychological flexibility here. One part of psychological flexibility is to choose your behaviors based on the context that are in line with your values. So, your biggest value is to be productive over the weekdays. And let's start flexibly looking at how behaviors look like in this current context. So, for one person, productivity in this pandemic can look like working for 2 hours, taking an hour break, working for 2 more hours, maybe napping for some time, and working for 2 more hours. Or for someone else, it can look like waking up early in the morning, getting all your work done, and then taking a bit of a break in the early afternoon. Or for someone else, it can be about taking only three things at a time rather than five things that you would do before the pandemic days. Reframe productivity. Reframe the definition of it. There is no one single definition of what productivity means like to all of us. It is all defined by a company standard or societal conditioning. Look at it very creatively and flexibly. And for weekends, fun and recreation again can be reframed differently. It can be about giving yourself permission to sleep for a longer duration. It can be about giving yourself permission to watch 3 movies instead of 1 movie that you would do usually. Reflect on some of these definitions and concepts back at home. Several studies have shown that looking at a context with a lot of flexibility improves your quality of life and your psychological well being. As always, I will see you again tomorrow. We have 2 more days left on this video series, so I'll hope to see you tomorrow. Bye. Thank you.